Hey guys, and welcome back to another What If here. Today we were doing What If Naruto was smart part 1, and yes, I have done this. This was my second ever What If I have ever done on the channel. The first one being What If Naruto had the 2 times Matabi. But yeah, and well, I ended up somewhat ending it on part 4 with obviously nobody really wanting it, so I just somewhat stopped doing it. So obviously I somewhat brought it back because I put it in the poll, and yeah. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's get into it. So start around when Naruto would somewhat be around 5 years old, as so it'd be in the academy, as though it'd currently be somewhat with heroes, and rather they would be probably more likely at either Ichiraku Ramen or in the Hokage's office, as Naruto would somewhat state that obviously his dream, with Hiruzen asking what his dream was, and Naruto would somewhat state that his dream was to become the Hokage, so that people would so that, you'd have people, would have to acknowledge him. Then he was somewhat nod and tell Naruto that he would somewhat have to read, and Naruto would tell him that he didn't like reading and that. Though they continued to somewhat talk for a while. Yeah, and from there, we could of course go by with, though Naruto is still not obviously bothering to somewhat go obviously to the library, which Hiruzen had told Naruto, right, if he did really want to be the Hokage, then he'd have to obviously go to the library to somewhat obviously learn a lot of stuff to be smart. So yeah, though Naruto would somewhat encounter, he'd somewhat walk into a person who he knew, and they'd somewhat catch up, and though this person would also ask Naruto, just like Hiruzen, what his dream was. Naruto would state, like he did with Hiruzen, that his dream was to become the Hokage, and the person would say, oh, so you're gonna go to the library, and Naruto would state that he didn't like reading, and though the person would think for a while before those should come to the conclusion, and would ask Naruto if he somewhat could read, with Naruto going, of course I can, I just don't like to read. And should go, Naruto, it's fine if you can't, I'm free right now, so if you very much want to, I can actually teach you someone how to read. Naruto would someone look at her and go, really? And she somewhat nod, and from there, around a maybe month and a half would go by with Naruto, with obviously her doing some missions. So when she had free time, she was with Naruto teaching them how to read. And yeah, obviously, yeah. Though now that Naruto could somewhat read, he'd finally go to the library for the first time. And yeah, once he'd somewhat arrive, he'd somewhat obviously go and learn about the somewhat shinobi history, and after a long while, and after a couple of months, he'd end up obviously going into the academy section, and would start reading on chakra, because he'd remember the history books that someone mentioned stuff like chakra and that. So yeah, and he'd learn what chakra is, and he'd the book would obviously also state just how important chakra control is. And from there, Naruto would somewhat look for a short exercise in what he somewhat could with the only book or scroll on chakra control exercise would only be the somewhat leaf sticking and leaf floating exercise. So that would somewhat leave, and it would take him around say 6 months to learn how to stick a leaf to his head. And remember, he's mainly focused on reading, not really somewhat chakra control exercise, as he's in the academy. It's not going to be obviously going to war the very next day or something like that. Yeah. So he would from there he would then try and obviously float it, with that being the next and last chakra control exercise on the thing. So on the scroll that he'd read from, and it'd take him another 3 months from there to be able to float the leaf. And so he'd end up going to Hiruzen and asking him about obviously the next step after leaf stick and floating. Hiruzen would ask him to somewhat show him that he could actually do that, with them somewhat staring at one another, with Naruto asking why were we Hiruzen would sort of go out, and then Naruto would go, do you have any leaves? I don't have any on me. And he was right, somewhat forgetting that, and Hiruzen would somewhat send him and Naruto out to a just random kind of abandoned-ish training ground. And from there Naruto would show him that he could stick a leaf to his forehead and also float it off. From there Hiruzen would tell Naruto about the next step after that was called tree walking. And after someone explaining obviously the core principle behind it, Naruto somewhat would nod, and Hiruzen would end up going back, and though he'd ask one of his Zambu to watch Naruto. Though of course, as it's not as Naruto hasn't made learning chakra control a main priority, it would take him around a month and a half to learn how to walk up a tree. So during that time, he'd somewhat obviously found the jutsu section of the academy somewhat part of the library, and there'd only be 3 obviously somewhat jutsus in there: clone, replacement, and transformation. And he'd know the clone jutsu would probably be out for him, because from reading it seemed to be work on requiring a lot of control, and he really didn't at the moment. So it's either over replacement or transformation. And after reading both over and over at least 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 or 6, he'd decide on transformation, as the excess chakra would just be put into smoke, some of the smoke. So it was the most useful, it was the best somewhat jutsu to learn fast, because as he'd somewhat obviously used that, as he obviously as it gets used to it, his chakra control would also somewhat slightly increase. So he would somewhat learn of it, and reading obviously somewhat over it, he'd amused that obviously it could transform him, and he'd think, did it mean anything anything at all? And the thing never stated that he couldn't become inanimate object, a stone, a rock, a kunai shoken. It just amused that it may be somewhat harder. So you'd think, well, the most easiest thing would be to just for the transformation was to just say it increases hair length, but he wanted something harder but still easy. And what was somewhat hard but also necessarily easy for obviously somewhat a beginner, well, changing one's own gender. So he'd obviously come up with, he'd think of that, and would then go off to the somewhat whatever section of the library that would have the human body, the biology or whatever part of the library. It'd be medical part of said library. That they would somewhat enter that part, finding the book that he was somewhat, or going through a couple of books until he found the one he was looking for. He'd read obviously over the differences between a male and female obviously body, and obviously some of the age difference between a child and an adult. And after learning of that, remembering it, and he'd somewhat go home. He'd first go to the somewhat training that night who's taking him to. He was somewhat about to do it, and he'd somewhat realise that if it did succeed, it'd be obviously somewhat a naked gal in a open area. Not such a great idea, so he'd quickly go back home as fast as he could, which would take him a part of 5 or 6 minutes. Once he'd get home, he'd go to his bedroom, he'd open his window, though shut his curtains, the window being open to allow the chakra smoke to obviously leave the room. He'd keep his door shut just in case players and all that came in, because he wasn't stupid. He knew the the third Hokage, he was had a key to his apartment. So if he didn't answer, Hiruzen may obviously get worried and burst through the door, open it with his his spare key, and so Naruto would somewhat close his eyes as he'd as the main point of the obviously transformation was more so the visualization of what you want to become. He'd put his hands together, and after a bit of time he'd say transform, and obviously smoke would erupt, filling the entire room, as though once Naruto would open his eyes the second he'd done it, he'd start counting on how long it would take, how long it would take for the chakra smoke to clear, his room to disappear. And it'd take around 50 seconds to a minute. Though it was already standing in front of his mirror, and he'd somewhat look, and while it looked right, but it didn't look better, though what he looked like, although he didn't quite look like what he'd imagined himself to be. So he'd start obviously doing that more and more and more, doing the transformation, because it moves that it could be the most useful jutsu out of any you could possibly ever learn. So after all, with some of these, after you could enter a crowd of people, and if they're far enough away from you, or you manage to lose them for a second, a quick transformation, and they would, you'd completely lose them. So then it's apparently one of the most least used jutsus, which was kind of odd, because a jutsu so useful had very little, people didn't really use it. You couldn't really understand why. So that of course somewhat matched with that was somewhat in between. It was somewhat in the middle. He'd learn obviously the transformation around halfway, so he'd be halfway done with tree walking, though once he'd finally got it tree walking down, aka mastered it, whilst doing obviously somewhat transformation also different times. So I would go back today, because he just gotten down the transformation, so he'd go home, he'd be home, and he'd do the transformation again into the same form that he initially did. That took around 50 minutes to 50 seconds to a minute for the smoke to clear out, and instead of that, it would take around 25 seconds for the 20 to 25 seconds for the chocolate smoke to clear out. And and of course he'd then somewhat transform into a more adult, female adult form. Then after releasing that, a male adult form. Then into a dog, cat, spider, rat, bird, anything. Well, just obviously living creatures that he'd obviously somewhat learnt of, and he'd thought that they could obviously somewhat be useful. Horse for pulling heavy things. If a horse had died, on a mission, say like they were on a mission, horse died, well, now they're gonna have to wait for a new horse. Well, what's the point? You have a transformation, just transform into a freaking horse, hook up, and you're off again. So yeah. Well, bird for obviously flying over maybe an enemy camp or that, and seeing the positions of the enemy and how many they are. A spider for spying, because they're somewhat obviously very small and that, so could easily be most people. Everyone would somewhat ignore a spider because incredibly unlikely a spider's gonna be a spy, right? Well, yeah. Good animal for a good living creature to transform into for spying work, and every somewhat obviously animal had their own obviously benefits, and that cats were known for being more obviously either somewhat fast and flexible. Dogs can obviously somewhat be fast, but cats would always somewhat outbeat a dog in speed. But though dogs tend to somewhat have, possibly a better nose, whereas cats have a much better, hearing range than dogs, I think. Anyway. Yeah. Anyway, though Naruto would somewhat, going through that, he'd amused that maybe he would finally start obviously transforming into physical objects, and he'd been trying to transform into a frying pan for the past week or so now, so he'd try but fail. Though, he'd been making very slow progress, but progress nonetheless. And after all, transforming into an inanimate object would be hard. Though after that he'd go to the Hokage's office to Hizen and would ask Hizen for the next chakra control exercise with some obviously Hizen some obviously asking Naruto if he had to show him proof that he had got it down. They would send him to Naruto would somewhat train. Naruto would show him, and though Naruto would also somewhat ask, as he'd somewhat be obviously amusing that, though that obviously I need to think that obviously once you could transform into obviously a frying pan, he'd have to somewhat obviously see if it would somewhat hurt, but how could he, because it'd be a frying pan? Well, he would have to make a clone, but the clones are only somewhat illusion. They can't touch stuff. So was there a clone that could, or that could somewhat think for itself, and that? So ask Hizen if it was, because if that wasn't, he'd just mess about with hand signs until he came across one, until he did something, made one that did. Hizen would quickly state that the thing he was asking for was the shadow clone. Naruto would ask if he could learn it, and Hiruzen would ask, why, and Naruto would tell him that he was trying to transform into some inanimate object, and that it required obviously look like a shadow clone to somewhat test some stuff. Hiruzen would somewhat think about it and would then tell him once he could transform into whatever he was trying to somewhat come back, and then he'd give it to Naruto, the shadow clone jutsu. Naruto would somewhat nod, would proceed to show Hiruzen that he could do the tree walking, and Hiruzen would then tell him the next step was not tree walking, water walking. And yeah, obviously good 3 months later, I did finally be able to transform into a somewhat frying pan, though at that time Hiruzen had asked why doesn't he try and do something like a doll or that, though Naruto would somewhat easily obviously do it because a doll was made out of wood. Wood was in a way alive, a living thing, because it came from a tree, which was a plant that came from a seed. Naruto would explain that to Hiruzen, and so a obviously wooden doll or wooden sword would be easy for Naruto because it was alive. It was somewhat the hardest thing to a living creature to do, either a tree or a plant or that. Though, anyway, though Naruto, as I had said, would something be able to finally transform into a frying pan, Naruto would obviously show Hiruzen, and Hiruzen would, as such, would somewhat keep to it and would give Naruto the Sharingan Jutsu that at the same time. Naruto would somewhat ask if his dad was the 4th Hokage, and before Hiruzen could obviously say no or that, he'd state that though, him and the 4th Hokage, were the only ones that had the exact same, he had the exact same, colour eyes of the 4th Hokage, the hair, the way he's somewhat obviously spiky hair, and the same, hair colour as well. That, he'd state that he'd have to be his son. There was no other way, because the 4th Hokage didn't have no other relatives, because he was an orphan. Hiruzen would end up sighing and would finally somewhat admit that somewhat obviously he was, and though Hiruzen would ask if obviously he somewhat hated him, and Naruto would shake his head and would tell Hiruzen why he didn't hate him, because he somewhat would understand, as for obviously Hokage he was in S or S or double S class. Naruto told him that if he did tell him, when he was 3-4 years old, before he'd started educating himself, he could have told the wrong person and started the next, the 4th Great Shinobi War, or you'd just not be here today. But though Naruto would ask that, it meant that he obviously that he got his somewhat body shape, or he looked more like his mum, or like the rest of him, and obviously his last name meant that he got it from his mum, which is not only telling Naruto his mother was, and from there Naruto would then ask if he had the fox inside of him, all in the same day, back to back, and before Hiruzen could try and obviously persuade Naruto from somewhat let Naruto obviously think anymore, and Naruto would say that it'd be obvious because he's the fourth Hokage's son, so it somewhat makes sense, because after all, you can't kill chakra, you can only somewhat transform it or seal it within something, or not seal it, but store it within something, and that then must be stored or in somewhat in him, kept away, obviously safely somewhat locked away, and Hizen would somewhat end up just signing with begrudgingly, obviously, somewhat telling Naruto that he was right, that he did have the fox inside of him, and to explain to him somewhat what happened, though Naruto really wouldn't need to know, because he did already somewhat know. He would just know that instead of the fourth Kage killing the fox, the fox inside of him, or though Naruto would ask obviously what was part in the fox pack or whatever, and Hiruzen would somewhat tell Naruto to pull up his top, and Naruto would, and Hiruzen would tell him to send chakra to his stomach, or mold chakra at his stomach. Naruto would, and the seal would come to life, would show itself, and Naruto would ask what it was, and Hiruzen would explain to Naruto that it was Funjutsu, and that was somewhat a seal, and they'd talk a bit more with somewhat Hiruzen would end up giving Naruto a book on Funjutsu, level 1 Funjutsu, and though Hiruzen would obviously state that before he even tries, somewhat obviously learning level 1, he should practice his handwriting, and try and obviously get it straight, very, like straight lines, curves, and that there was no obviously wonky, because Funjutsu could be very finicky, so Naruto somewhat nod and would occasionally practice in that as well, though half an hour later Naruto would be back giving Hiruzen the scroll back on the Shadow Jutsu, and he'd ask Naruto to obviously show, to show him that he could actually do it. Naruto would put his hands together and would say Shadow Clone Jutsu, and the two Shadow Clones would come up either side of him. Hiruzen would nod, and Naruto would ask if there was anything else. Hiruzen would shake his head, and Naruto would then dispel the two clones, and he would head home to do a bit of experimenting. Though just before we somewhat continue, Hiruzen would tell Naruto that there was another, or at least an advance or an upgrade to the jutsu called Multi Shadow Clone, though they would tell Naruto that he would be giving him that not until, say, he becomes somewhat a genin at the age of 12. So if he wanted it, he'd have to wait until he's 12 years old, 12, 13, so when his class would graduate. Naruto would somewhat think about it, because he'd been thinking about maybe graduating early, though the muse that if he graduated early, he would have less time to mess about with, say, maybe with either the Shadow Clone, or more specifically the Transformation Jutsu. He wouldn't be able to mess about with it more. So he would end up somewhat agreeing with him, though he'd somewhat agree with his and saying that and from there he'd leave and he'd go to his apartment. He'd make a Shadow Clone with the Shadow Clone immediately knowing what obviously its boss or master wanted, was going to somewhat do, and it would transform into, it'd take a second or two, but 5 or so seconds, though the clone would eventually transform into a frying pan. From there, Naruto would pick up the somewhat frying pan and would put over the kitchen hob. He'd then obviously somewhat turn the gas on, and it would somewhat heat up, and Naruto would somewhat amuse that it after the cyclone hadn't dispelled. So maybe you try, maybe you could try and use it like to cook something on it. So he'd quickly go into his fridge, grab an egg, crack it over, put some egg in, and end up, having and somewhat eating. Once it was cooked, he'd somewhat put it onto a plate, and obviously somewhat put it into water, let it, try and somewhat obviously let it somewhat cool down a bit. The cologne would then dispel. So the cologne would then somewhat dispel. So it means that obviously the experiment was obviously somewhat over, and Naruto would get these somewhat memories and that, and obviously it was somewhat what it felt like. Not just obviously somewhat beef frying pan, he knew what it felt like beef frying pan, but obviously it felt like, to have obviously flame underneath to feel obviously somewhat warm up and that, and Naruto would, after eating the egg, would make another clone, though Naruto himself, not said clone. The real Naruto would transform himself into the frying pan with the clone, taking him over to the Harbind, doing a similar thing, though not cracking egg, of course. Did somewhat fill it up. Did fill the somewhat what's the pan with water, so that and once all the water is somewhat gone, the clone would turn it off, and Naruto would release the jutsu, and from there Naruto would think that could he do other inanimate things, say like a washing machine, or something slightly more complicated, or that though it means that he would have to obviously learn the ins and outs of it, which from there he'd go to go to the library to learn about how, maybe not a washing machine, because that maybe seemed more complicated, maybe something somewhat less complicated, and from there somewhat the years would somewhat go by as Naruto would learn how to transform into different obviously somewhat equipment, though he'd somewhat have his shadow clones do it, and the shadow clones would obviously somewhat send back, once the experiment was over, would send back the feeling of say rice, say like an electric heater, feeling the actual electrons that move through, like what it felt like to have somewhat of the electricity run through you, all that kind of stuff, and Naruto was obviously somewhat curious, though Naruto did eventually get curious to where this electricity or energy came from, and he'd read a book on how electricity was somewhat produced, and he'd obviously know about motors, and it's obviously somewhat described what a generator was, which was an inefficient motor, and he'd be somewhat confused on what an inefficient motor meant, so he'd somewhat keep reading, but would describe obviously the difference between a generator and a motor, and that the difference between them is what somewhat you want. You want, though, like a motor, an electric motor, obviously to be somewhat efficient, you want it to use as less power as possible to spin as fast as possible, whilst a somewhat generator is the opposite of that. A motor that would be good as a generator would be one that somewhat required a shite ton of energy to move this same small metal rod, like say the same two motors, but the motor that was inefficient required 1,000 times more than the efficient one. Thus the inefficient one would be in a highly efficient electric generator, whilst the one that was obviously efficient with using less energy would be bad at producing energy. opposite. Yeah. And Naruto somewhat means that, he'd somewhat run the land, obviously, and he'd somewhat think of, like, though, yeah, he'd somewhat obviously run, to obviously, think about, obviously, what that may, obviously feel like to generate the actual electricity. He'd somewhat have to be what they call a power plant, and, well, yeah, you somewhat obviously read up on the different obviously ways that a power plant generate the electricity. Though the obviously thing though did just obviously somewhat state that they'd somewhat realise that you could just connect the inefficient and efficient modes together, or generate the somewhat motor and just spin the generator fast enough for the motor to somewhat start turning slowly, and thus it know what it felt like to generate electricity, just not obviously large scale. So yeah, and that's what something that I'd end up doing, having these so much shadow clones do. He'd he'd make 4 shadow clones. Because again, obviously, the only issue with Shadow Clone, the difference between Shadow Clone and Mod Shadow Clone is that Shadow Clone, like his hard limit for Shadow Clone was 2. Whereas, sure, you could make more, but the track would obviously be different. The more clones, because he'd only be able to make 2, then those 2 clones would have to make 2. And from there, some would say the user would easily be able to determine which one's the real Naruto. A shadow clone that could easily go, I want 1,000, proof of 1,000, and they'd all have equal chakra reserves. That's a lot harder to find the real one. They need to haystack, pretty much, it becomes. So, yeah. Anyway, though, yeah, Naruto would obviously somewhat, Naruto would make somewhat 2, and the 2 clones would make 1 each, making 4. 2 of them would turn into, 1 would turn into an efficient, obviously, electrical motor, the other one would be a generator. The other 2 clones would transform into, wires to, obviously, connect said 2 things together. From there, though Naruto would, just before the last one would transform, he would ask it to make another one, as that would need to obviously be handled to turn said thing. Though said clone would make 2, because for the other end to actually see if it was turning, because a small rod trying to see if it was turning is pretty hard. So yeah. And yeah, after that, and after a lot of turning, the motor would, and after a turn incredibly fast, the electric modes somewhat slowly spin. Yeah. And it'd somewhat obviously start, all the clones would dispel, and you'd get obviously the memories of obviously the clones and what it was like, obviously, be obviously wise on what, how it felt like to have, electricity run through wires, and, a motor, and, well, you already know what it was like to be a motor, but not a generator, and what that felt like, and yeah. And after somewhat all of that, now, yeah. And though, again, so finally, the Naruto would also ending up somewhere down the line. I'm asking Hiruzen to somewhat, when Naruto somewhat showing Hiruzen something, Naruto would ask if Hiruzen could somewhat teach him the Senshin. So Hiruzen not seeing obviously anything, like no reason to not somewhat show it to him. He would show Naruto the hand sign, and would tell him, or hand signs, and would somewhat tell him, I think that, scroll would. Yeah. After that, yeah. Anyway, though, Naruto would finally somewhat be 12 years old, and it'd be the day in which, it'd be the canon exams, and of course they'd somewhat pass, they'd pass somewhat the dead last, and they'd think, wait, but he's smart, right? Well, yeah, and Naruto knew, would somewhat know that to obviously have the best sensei would be to be the dead last, because the dead last was always with the best shinobi of the year. Best shinobi was currently Sasuke, and as such, Sasuke would have the obviously best somewhat Jonin, and thus Naruto figured that to have the best chance of obviously learning somewhat surviving would be to be on somewhat Sasuke's team. Even though he doesn't really like Sasuke, he could put his differences, aside to work with Sasuke. And yeah, anyway, though he'd somewhat pass, and though Mizuki would still somewhat come to him because not to be dead last, and everyone know Naruto obviously would somewhat want to be the Hokage. As such, Mizuki would somewhat tell him that there was obviously a secret, test in which he could become a somewhat Chunin if he somewhat, took the Forbidden Scroll and gave it to him. Naruto would, no, that was a lie, and Mizuki was trying to get him into obviously trouble. And though Naruto would somewhat agree to somewhat do it, that would be somewhat lying. And Mizuki would somewhat end up leaving him, and Naruto would go to the Hokage's office and tell Hiruzen about it, and Hiruzen would send would somewhat obviously send the army out to find Mizuki and have him taken to the somewhat they'll have to, for one of them, transform into Naruto and fake a Forbidden Scroll and see if it's true. And obviously, if it was to, take him to the torture and interrogation. Yeah. With that, though, Naruto would ask Hiruzen for the multi-chakra jutsu, because he was now technically a genin, and because he did obviously pass. So, and Hiruzen would somewhat give him a scroll. Naruto would somewhat read through it, and 30 minutes later, Naruto would give it back, and Hiruzen would ask if Naruto obviously, could somewhat do it. Though Naruto would somewhat say yes, and Hiruzen would always take Naruto to, they would somewhat leave and would go to where Naruto generally somewhat, or at least they started to somewhat train, which was an abandoned training ground, so it was somewhat technically more like Naruto's private training ground. From there, Naruto would put his hands together and would somewhat say multi-chakra jutsu, producing around, quite easily 100 clones. Though Naruto said he could do a lot more than this, it was just somewhat anymore, and it'd be somewhat pointless, because you want somewhat, Hiruzen would nod, Naruto would dispel all the shadow clones. And next they would roll around, which would be, though Mizuki would be taken to the torture and interrogation. For obviously, because Naruto wasn't obviously lying to Hiruzen. Next day and that day would somewhat go down somewhat similarly, though Naruto obviously wouldn't know where, stupid face paint, all that. Naruto would just obviously somewhat take picture, somewhat, though Naruto, or at least somewhat shinobi outfit, it it won't be the same one. It'd be a more kind of darker orange, and that. Yeah, though I'd leave you to somewhat think of, your own somewhat look for Naruto's, say, genin outfit until I decide myself what he may look like. But yeah, it's just a dark orange, good for somewhat stealth. If he, obviously, because it means that he would still have to be good at stealth, because if he ran out of somewhat chakra or couldn't perform any jutsus, he would have to make sure that his clothes were dark enough, and yeah. Anyway, yeah, Naruto somewhat obviously still show, though after obviously Naruto meeting Kanamaru and showing him the transformation jutsu, that would still go down the same with somewhat obviously Naruto somewhat getting Kanamaru, or at least somewhat have Kanamaru to somewhat better transform into obviously a cow. And while a somewhat small rivalry would somewhat start between them to how to somewhat see who had the best female transformation. Yeah, of course, I can never really remember his name, but Kanamaru's private sensei, somewhat show up and somewhat, Naruto would somewhat tell Kanamaru to somewhat stay back, and that and Naruto would somewhat deal with it. Naruto would do, somewhat make 10 or so shadow clones, and from there they'd all yell out transform, as Naruto would reveal for the first time a somewhat sexy jutsu, Anyway, though Naruto somewhat, with the person dealt with, and Naruto would obviously then, obviously tell Kanamaru that's obviously why that being able to transform into go is somewhat obviously good. Plus, you could obviously also say in the future you're running away from an enemy or that, and you can somewhat try and lose them momentarily in, say, a crowd, and then transform into, say, like a young, maybe somewhat like child, or transform into a somewhat woman, which of course almost everyone's more or less going to expect a boy to transform into boys to transform into adult boys and girls to transform into adult girls. So yeah, instead doing transforming into a girl would more than likely survive that encounter and get back to where you was meant to be, go back to obviously Konoha and reveal, and yeah, Kanamaru somewhat just nod, yeah, and yeah, after that would obviously somewhat into the team of summons. Yeah, obviously that would somewhat go down the same. Though Naruto somewhat means trying to figure out who his sensei could possibly be, and you'd think that there's really only one possible choice, that being a person called Kakashi Hatake, the copycat ninja, or Kakashi or Kakashi of the Sharingan. Yeah. And it means if this Kakashi person was still very much alive, which he soon probably, would be more than likely their team's sensei, because Sasuke had the potential to work in the Sharingan, and as Sasuke is the last one with the last Uchiha and a possibility of working the Sharingan, Kakashi being there and the one with a Sharingan could train Sasuke in how to properly utilize it. So yeah, it made sense. And 3 hours obviously later, Kakashi would arrive. and would say whatever he did in canon. Sasuke and Sakura would end up blaming Naruto, with Naruto ascension to the roof. Though once Sasuke and Sakura would arrive, with somewhat Sasuke wondering how enough Naruto got there before he did. And yeah, though they'd somewhat sit down, Sasuke and Sakura's introductions, Kakashi, Sasuke and Sakura's introductions would go the exact same. Though Naruto would state that, though Naruto's would somewhat be different, slightly similar to somewhat Kakashi's. More so, the part that would be similar would be the somewhat lack of information kind of thing. Naruto would only state two things. Well, more than two things, but only two things per category. So you'd say that obviously is somewhat name, Naruto Uzumaki, his likes. Well, they had many likes, though two of them would be training and reading. His dislikes were fangirls and Mr. Broody, which Kakashi didn't realise was, or Isakin also would realise that meant Sasuke. And yeah, he would state that his hobbies were somewhat training and again reading, and he'd state that that he had a dream and a goal. His dream was to become Hokage, and his goal was to become the strongest, to become stronger than all the previous Hokage. Kakashi was somewhat nod and would somewhat amused, and would obviously state that it was good that they were all, different. And though Kakashi would obviously state what he did in canon, with obviously Sasuke, and though you'd see Sasuke and Sakura would somewhat be shocked, with Sakura almost, going to somewhat yell, though looking at Naruto, and you'd see that Naruto seemingly knew this, and would ask how come, would someone ask Naruto how come he didn't seem surprised, and Naruto would state that, obviously tell him why, and that it made sense that there'd be a somewhat hidden-ish second exam, because after all, the first one only really covered somewhat obviously throwing, could you throw, could you hit a somewhat target, stationary target, and somewhat just, it wasn't much of a shinobi thing. This test was to make sure we did actually have the skills of a genin, and that would obviously mean being able to put our differences aside to work as a team. And you'd obviously somewhat say, knowing Sasuke and Sakura, they probably won't bother working with me, but even though I may somewhat hate them for what they kind of are, or how they are, I'm willing to put my differences aside and work with them. And yeah, Kakashi would somewhat nod them and somewhat say that, at least, even though Naruto may hate them or dislike them, he was still willing to work with them. Yeah, of course, the next day would roll around. Well, yeah, of course, Sakura wouldn't exactly like that, about Naruto, and that Naruto was shown in her Sasuke episode. She'd try and hit Naruto, and Naruto would catch her hand and would hit her in a somewhat press point, where she'd somewhat be just paralysed, pretty much, and Naruto would say that if she was a shinobi, a genin, if she was somewhat actually true, somewhat genin level, then the paralysis should only maybe last 30 minutes or so. If, for most somewhat civilians, it would last around an hour, though, of course that could increase, though it was somewhat around an hour to even 24 hours, so she could be stuck there a complete day. Yeah, though Kakashi would somewhat though tell the team to, he'd somewhat tell the team to be there at 8 o'clock. For Naruto, it somewhat sounded like, oh yeah, meet me at, the training ground 7 at 11 o'clock. Reason why, because Kakashi was 3 hours late, and Naruto knew that Kakashi probably wouldn't be, like he wasn't going to let up being late anytime soon, so, yeah. And, well, with that, the team had dispersed, or more so Sasuke and Naruto would leave, leaving somewhat Sakura there, somewhat on the floor, freaking out, like, obviously she couldn't move. Kakashi would also seemingly disappear, though he was somewhat watching her. 2 hours later, Sakura would somewhat get her, be able to somewhat barely move, and then after that, she'd be able to move enough to somewhat get home, though Kakashi would somewhat follow her in the shadows to make sure that she would get home safely. Anyway, after that, next day would roll around, and at around 7:30, Sasuke would appear at 7. So 10 minutes before 8, Sakura would appear, and at 10 minutes before 11, Naruto would arrive, with Sakura yelling at Naruto that he was late. Though Naruto would simply state that Kakashi, their sensor wasn't here, so how could he be late, and that for one to be late, they would have to be later than the person that designated the time of when they should be there on, to be there. Though, anyway, though, indeed, state anyway that Kakashi would arrive here at 11, as, he's 3 hours late. If he told us to meet her at 8, he meant 11, because 3 hours, 8, 9, 10, 11, 8 at 3, it's 11. Sakura, somewhat Sasuke and somewhat just glare off into the distance, thinking to himself, how comes he didn't realise that, or something like that. Anyway, 10 minutes later, Kakashi somehow would arrive, going, sorry, I'm... before he could finish, Naruto would cut him off, saying that... Well, no, Sakura would obviously state that Mum would cut Kakashi off, stating that he was late, though Naruto would quickly follow up with telling Sakura that Kakashi had actually been here for 3 hours straight. Kakashi would ask, what do you mean that I wasn't, as Naruto would point over to where the milestone would be, and would state that he was there for 3 hours, so it's somewhat 8 o'clock, and Kakashi would somewhat stare at Naruto and would ask how would he, if Naruto is stating that there were 2 very important people to him, and very much on that stone, as Kakashi would go wide-eyed, as he'd somewhat think that it was impossible that he didn't know his parents were, like Kakashi would somewhat think. Though, and Naruto would say, and plus, write a small little chat. Anyways, Kakashi would then and then try and think, who he somewhat met over there, but none of, the people that he'd arrived to pay some type of respect to said fallen either friends or teammates or family members that were obviously were shinobi that had died in action, and none of them looked somewhat like Naruto at all, as he then realised that Naruto must have been in a in a transformation, and he obviously somewhat wide-eyed at that. Anyway, though I'm just going to skip the first one test, though you can think of, up to, you can somewhat use your own ideas on how they could have passed, but they would end up passing somewhat similarly to how they did in canon. Though, yeah. Of course, though, Naruto, even though Naruto himself was, with his team, he did make a couple of shadow clones, one practicing Funjutsu, and a couple of actually practicing the well, clone jutsu. Why? Well, clone jutsu was an illusion which required spiritual chakra, or, well, yeah, because that's spiritual and physical, and, oh, yeah, Naruto obviously read up what genjutsu somewhat more so required, and he realised that it required more, obviously, spiritual energy than physical, and yeah, and he somewhat was obviously wondering, what else would be good at, obviously, or at least where you could initially learn what spiritual energy felt like. And he'd end up obviously discovering that, for some odd reason, medical ninjutsu was spiritual. Where he'd somewhat learn a simple, somewhat healing jutsu just to heal obviously very, somewhat small cuts and that minor bruise. Just somewhat bruises and small cuts. And that was enough to give him obviously somewhat enough information to know how to somewhat so he's trying to obviously up his amount of yin chakra or spiritual chakra, and pretty much pulling out, so trying to obviously use more spiritual than physical. So that's what the clones were obviously trying to do when it came to the clone jutsu and that. And if you're obviously still figuring like, so what does it matter if Naruto can do, the clone jutsu? Well, if Naruto could do clone jutsu, he can then do genjutsu, because so in the end, obviously, somewhat Naruto knew genjutsu was somewhat useful. Well, it had its somewhat. It wasn't say as useful as the transformation, but it was still relatively useful to know. So why not? And plus, well, with obviously him finding out that he was obviously some Jinchuriki, and he'd read up about Jinchurikis and that they were practically, stated to be impossible for Jinchuriki to do, genjutsu, though. That to me is that it just meant that, or at least detailed beasts, one more, or that it meant that detailed beast was more, physical chakra than spiritual chakra, or more yang than yin, and that, all what somebody had to do was somewhat just use more yin chakra, or more yin chakra than yang chakra, and they'd be able to use, be able to do genjutsu in that. So it means that he could possibly be the first Jinchuriki ever to be able to perform genjutsu, which anyway, and that's why I'm going to end it here, guys. So if you have enjoyed this part, tell me in the comments down below if you want a part 2. Again, obviously someone tell me. Hope you guys have a somewhat good day or night time wherever you are and whenever you watch this, and stay safe and good. Bye.